What is good, everybody? It is Thursday, which means it is Dynasty lunch break time. As you can see, wow, my hair's a little crazier than I realized. Just hopped out of the shower. Just trying to look, just trying to look good for you guys. I don't want to look all shabby, nasty. Although I probably should have double checked that my hair was done first. But whatever. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're just here to talk fantasy football and have a good time. Everybody's here. The gang's all here. Look at these guys. Man, all the homies. All the homies are here today. We've got questions. We're going to be doing live AMA. Look, if you guys have that many questions, which has happened a lot lately, I'll just keep talking to you guys. I don't need to get into my draft takes. You guys listen to the Dynasty Nerds podcast. You'll get to hear all of this stuff. So if you guys have questions and stuff you want to discuss and talk about, let's discuss it and talk about it. Like Tatum here said, Cedric Tillman and a 27 second for Ayuk, a good deal. I would do that. I would do Cedric Tillman at 27 second for Brandon Ayuk. I think Brandon Ayuk is a good buy low. And although I'm not necessarily out on Cedric Tillman, I think you have a much higher likelihood of hitting there. And that second is just so far away. You don't know where that's going to land. So I would much rather go with Brandon Ayuk. Stevie agrees. Said, I'm no expert. You sounded like an expert to me, Stevie. Sounded like an expert to me. Is Josh Jacobs a screaming buy? If you are a contender, I think a lot of those older running backs are very good buys right now. Very good buys. Good opportunities to get in and snag those guys if they're ones that have good job security. I'm not saying buy a veteran just to buy a veteran. Get a guy that has good job security. Yes, they are the cheapest they can be. Maybe not quite right now, but right around the NFL draft and your rookie draft. That's when they are typically the cheapest. Randall says, is Judkins still your RB2? It's very close. I actually have Trey Henderson slightly edging out Judkins. Now, there's still a few other guys that I have to cover. Most of the big names I've done, though, let me look at my nerd score right now. The only bigger names that I have not done, Trevor Etienne, Devin Neal. It's really it as far as the bigger names in this class. So I have a feeling that will end up probably being 2 and 3 for me. But there's a lot of good running backs in this class. This is not to say that guys like Johnson and Hampton and Scadaboo are not good players. They absolutely are. I just have those guys kind of in a tier above. All right, Jared saying, taking Jeanty with the 101. I have 3 second-round picks and need some more RB help. Who are some running backs available in the second round to help boost my team in Superflex? So guys that you should be looking for in the second round more than likely are going to be guys like Ollie Gordon, Dylan Sampson, Damian Martinez. Those are some guys that I would expect to be in the second round that you're going to have a chance to draft and I think have a shot at being a fantasy relevant running back within the next 2 years. I'm not saying they're going to be RB1s. I'm just saying guys that would be interesting. Randall, Devin Neal's a good one. Like I said, he's one of the few bigger-ish names that I have not gotten to yet. So I can't say him definitively, but definitely one that I have my eye on. Stevie says, Garrett, what are we doing with Dalton Kincaid? Just holding. I traded for him in every Dynasty league I'm in. Yes, Rich talked about his husband on the one of the most recent shows that we did. And really right now, there's not a lot you can do other than just hold, which sucks. But you sell right now, you're selling at the lowest value that he's had since being drafted. So it's not a great time to sell, but I'm not necessarily wanting to buy at the moment because I'm not confident that he's actually going to become a legitimate fantasy option. So all of that being said, I do unfortunately believe it's just kind of hold right now with Dalton Kincaid. Absolutely, my guy. Brian says, got the 102 pick. I have Fields, McCarthy, Rodgers, and Cousins in a super flex. Sanders makes me nervous. What should I do? I am always big on best player available. So whoever the best player is on your board, regardless of position, that's who you should take. So I think right now there's 3 real good options that I think are legitimate to have as the 102 pick. You have Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Tet McMillan. I would not have any issue with any of those guys, but just take whoever the highest rated player is on your board. Does not matter who you have there or do not have there. You take the best player available. Bennett, 10 team, 1 quarterback. Man, so many questions. You guys are awesome. I'm gonna try to hustle, but I don't want to shortchange anyone and just run through their question. So I'm gonna try to thoughtful responses, but I will try to hustle along a little bit. 10 team, 1 quarterback, traded 104, 204, 209 for Rome. Is that a good move? I also have 101 and 103, so we'll get 1 running back and likely an RB2 or wide receiver 2. I think that's a great move. I have no issue with that in 1 QB because at 104, you're obviously Jeanty and Tet are gone. So now you're looking at, Luther Burden, Emeka Buka, Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson, Quinshad Judkins, all good players. But I would rather have Rome at this point. And late seconds, especially in a 1 QB, are not going to motivate me a ton. So, yeah, I have no issue with that trade at all. Superflex having trouble selling Thielen. I want a late second, settle for less, or wait till he kills it in week 1. Yeah, you're probably not going to get a second at this point just because people know he's going to retire at any point. So unfortunately, yeah, you're going to have to settle if you want to get rid of him. But I would just wait and hold because right now in the offseason is the worst time to sell an old veteran like that. You're just not going to get the value back that you would want for him. Joel, 101 Superflex tight end premium, trying to rebuild. Jeanty or take my quarterback at 101, trying to trade back and get a quarterback and a first for 101. Yeah, I am not going to take a lesser player because that's what I need. I'm still going to take the best available player. So if you get stuck and you cannot make a trade, take Ashton Jeanty. You'll be able to trade him later. Teams always need running backs, especially in season. So take the best available player. That's Ashton Jeanty. Now, if you can trade 101 as the hype builds, if you can trade 101 for, a quarterback that you really like, if you can trade him for Justin Herbert, if you can trade him for, one of those young, Joe Burrow, you can trade him for somebody like that you're excited about, then yes, absolutely make that move. Or a lower tier guy like I traded him for maybe that's not even that low of a tier, but Drake May. I traded 101 for Drake May and I got a first or maybe a second or something like that. I think that's a good move. Please give Neil a low nerd score so I can steal him in every draft. Look at this guy trying to tank his score. Do you like Jerry Jeudy over Tank Dell? At this point, I do. We're just not going to see Tank Dell more than likely next year. He's not going to be in this equation for this offense due to that injury, unfortunately. So, yeah, I would take Jerry Jeudy. Lucas kind of hit on it on the podcast, but would you be willing to pay for the buys that you led with? Ricky Pearsall, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan. So Ricky Pearsall, I would see if I can do like an early second. If I can do an early second, I would probably be willing to do that for Pearsall. Probably the same for McMillan. We're probably right in that same boat. If I can get him for an early second, I think that's a good move. Odunze, I would be willing to give, if it's super flex, anything after 102. So 103 on, I'd be willing to give, and maybe even add a little bit to it to make it happen. If you wanted to trade him straight up for 102 and Tet McMillan, I would have no real issue with that either. Stevie, what do you do? What do you think is the right move for A.J. Brown holders this offseason? I'm a competitor in the league that I have him. Then you just sit and you be happy. Like, as simple as that sounds, A.J. Brown is still that good. He's only 28 years old coming into this season for 2025. So he's still got plenty of time left. It's not like he's this ancient falling apart piece for fantasy teams. Like, he is still a high-end contributor. And I think we're starting to see the Mike Evans situation happen with A.J. Brown where, oh, he's old, I'm going to move off of him. And people have been thinking he's old for like 4 years, 5 years, and Mike Evans just continues to produce. I think that's starting to become what is happening with A.J. Brown where, oh, he's old, I'm going to move off him. Well, he's still probably got a good 4 years left in him. So I would probably just be holding. Unless somebody wants to give you a ton for him that really values him, then I'm good with that. I have no problem there. But otherwise, I would just hold a guy like A.J. Brown. All right, next one here. This is Kai saying, coming off a ship with Henry and Jones as running backs. Don't feel super confident in either going into next year. Good trade targets at running back for a reloading team. So targets that I would be looking at, Jonathan Taylor, he is now kind of entering that range too, where people are going to start talking about him as a little bit of an older asset. So I think he's a good one. Josh Jacobs, we mentioned him earlier in the show. Another one that people are going to start looking at as kind of an older asset that maybe doesn't have as much value. If you're looking for an RB2, I think David Montgomery is still a very good one, especially with that contract that he signed in the offseason. So David Montgomery, I think, would be a good RB2. And then I'm trying to think, is there anybody else that I would be targeting? No, I think those would be the main three that I would probably be taking a look at where the price and the production are going to make sense for you. All right, Alex Burrow Daniels. Okay, lots of players. Basically, what are you doing at 110? Trading for a vet or taking the best player available? So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to value for me. Unless there's like a specific player that I really want, it's going to come down to value. Like, is the player that I'm getting more valuable than the 110? Because right now, looking at your team, you're pretty solid at quarterback. You're really solid at wide receiver. Running back, you're good with your top two. It gets a little thin. And then you've got the top tight end. So there's nothing that you necessarily need. So you can just sit there at 110 and just say, hey, is there a really good player here? Yes, cool, I'll take him. If not, I'm going to trade him for a player I think will help me. Maybe another running back might be something that you could benefit from. But yeah, I'm not forcing it either way. I'm just kind of looking at, hey, what's best for my team? And then we'll make that move. But I think you're in a nice spot either way. Jason, in an 8 keeper, half-point Superflex league, stacked. Burrow, CJ Stroud, Bijan, Bucky, Justin Jefferson, Jamar, Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm debating the 8th keeper. Keep Tua for stability at quarterback, Kittle for short-term upside, or Kincaid, 2-time defending champ. Nice. Good job. I would probably be looking at Tua just because I don't want to get behind. You already have 2 quarterbacks, though. It depends on your league and how quickly quarterbacks go. Like, are you going to be destitute at your 3rd quarterback if you don't? If that's the case, then I'm probably keeping Tua. But if your league is going to be a little more loose with it, then give me George Kittle. Heard someone comp Caleb Johnson to Lev Bell. Do you see the similarities? Haven't watched more than highlights yet. Here's the tough part about a Lev Bell comp, because I've heard that as well. Lev Bell was a very different player in the NFL than he was in college. He lost some weight, got a lot quicker. If Caleb Johnson can do that, then yeah, I think that's amazing. But to trust that someone is going to drop weight and is going to get quicker, that's the toughest part about these evaluations is we don't always leave room for guys to improve, but we also can't expect that they will. So that's where these evaluations get really difficult. And you kind of have to know, like, when you get to know the players, when you're the coaches, when you're the GMs, when you're the scouts that are getting to know that these guys, you have a better feel for these kinds of things. What's this guy's work ethic like? What's his drive like? What's his mental fortitude like? What's it, all of these kinds of things. We don't get to know that. Those are not things that we are privy to. So, with that being said, I would have a hard time making that comp because I don't know if he can do that. I understand it. A guy that might be, I wouldn't want to say overweight because I don't think that's true for Caleb Johnson, but a bigger running back that might get a little bit slimmer to be a little more quick, things like that. Like, could he do that? Sure. But I'm not going to necessarily bet that he will. He's got good hands. He's a fine pass catcher and all that as well. So, Randall, I traded Kincaid, Pittman, and 110 for Odunze. I didn't need him, but I'm trying to buy Odunze everywhere. Chase Puka, McConkey, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Odunze are my wide receiver core. Wow, that is a very young, very talented wide receiver core. And while on the surface, I can understand how somebody might say you overpaid there. You got your guy, and you got the best player in the deal. So at the end of the day, I have no issue with that at all, Randall. I actually think it's low-key a smart move. Brian, absolutely. Sugar says 12 by 10 Superflex, start 10 PPR with a 0.75 tight end premium. What's the earliest you would take a tight end in the 25 draft? I have the 103, 105 through 107. With that type of premium, it depends on how you feel about Warren and Loveland, but I think 105, they are definitely in play. Definitely in play. I have a hard time taking them at 103, but I think they're definitely in play at 105 through 107. I would not have a problem taking any tight end in that range. Matt, absolutely, homie. All right. Dirty Bird, 14 team. Ooh, I like these ones. 14 team Superflex, start 9 PPR. Would you trade Jaden Daniels for Knicks and Neighbors? I have Lamar and Jaden Daniels. Oh, I'm not like huge on Bo Nix, but he looked good enough for me to say if I can get what is probably a late first to early second round pick in a startup in Malik Neighbors, and then I can get a third round pick on top of it for 102, I would probably make that move. So I think I would not have an issue doing that there. I think I would make that move. Old running back room with CMC, Henry, Kamara, Najee. Would you take two running backs at 101 and 104 to solidify your running back room for the foreseeable future? Receivers and QB are strong. Tight end is Kincaid. Once again, Jeanty's the best available player, so you're absolutely taking him. 104 is where this really kind of the rubber meets the road here. If I'm at 104 and my best player is Travion Henderson or Omarion Hampton or Quentin Johnston or not Quentin Johnston, Quinshad Judkins, I have no problem taking him there. But I'm still taking the best available player because, look, if I think the best available player there, or at least I believe my league mates think the best available player there is Cam Ward, then I'm going to take him, and then I will trade him for a running back, or I'll trade him for a tight end, which is a position of need, or something like that. I'm not going to just take a lower tier player because I feel like that's a need that I have. Powerfold, what's up, my guy? What's the gap between Ashton Jeanty and Judkins and Henderson? And then those two and the rest. So for me right now, we have a pretty big gap between Ashton Jeanty and then the Judkins Henderson tier for me. Now, there are going to be people that tier this differently, but there is a pretty big gap. My nerd score reflects that I'm not able to like give out all my scores yet, but for reference, Ashton Jeanty is in the 80s. The only other running back that I've ever graded in the 80s is Bijan Robinson over the past 6 seasons. So if that gives you any hint, he's in his own tier. And he's a good 4 or 5 points ahead of that next tier of Henderson and Judkins. So for me, there's a pretty big gap. Now, there's a lot of people that will say Henderson and Judkins are in the same tier as Caleb Johnson and Omari and Hampton. I have another tier gap where they're kind of about 3 points ahead of that next tier, which would be guys like Hampton, Gordon, Johnson, Scattaboo, players like that. So for me, I think there's pretty solid tiers between each player. Hop says, what's your confidence in Kamara in 2025 in the future? Running backs like that, it's year by year. So I don't know that I can say much more beyond 2025, but I feel pretty solid about them still in 2025. They're in a really, really bad cap situation. And I don't see them prioritizing a running back in the draft. So if they take one, like worst case scenario, it's a mid to late round 3 guy. Best case scenario, it's nobody. They don't draft a single running back. So I feel pretty solid about him for 2025, but I cannot say for certain beyond that point. All right. Johnny Dumplings says, I have one of the best starting lineups in my league, but I need backup running backs and receivers. I have the 107, 203, and 212 in this draft. Do I trade up for Jeanty or keep the picks for depth? If you are able to trade all 3 of those picks to get up to 101, absolutely do it. That's an incredible move. Usually, if you're going to trade 107 and then you're going to give 2 seconds, one of them being the last second, best you're going to be able to do is like 104, 105. So if that can get you to 101, I think that's a fantastic move. Okay, Downs, I just moved 106 plus Worthy for my 101 in a Dynasty league. My running backs are Achane, Bucky, Tracy, Javante, among a ton of other young upside rookies for last year. Look, 106 and Worthy, like stealing. You are a bandit. I think that's a fantastic move to go get Ashton Jeanty. Absolutely love it. Something I forgot. So I posted this. You guys are going to want to listen up here. I posted this on my Twitter, but I wanted to tell you guys in here because I value you. Now, some of you guys are already Nerd Herd members, and if so, you know the value of that film room. That film room is freaking incredible. However, if you are not a Nerd Herd member, listen up. Right now, I'm going to give you a 15% discount on any Nerd Herd membership you want, whether you want to use it just for the monthly or you want to use it for the yearly. Give it to you for anyone you want. Okay. 15% discount. It's promo code tape season. So capital T, APE, and then capital SZN, tape season. So I'm actually going to put it in the chat here. I'm putting it in the chat right now. Guys, if you have not checked out the film room, we have hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating. We have hundreds of games in there. All these players that we're talking about, all these rookies coming in, the Ashton Gentys, the Tet McMillans. We've even got tape from Bowling Green to get you Harold Fannin. Like, we've got every possible player that you could want in this. You want some Scattaboo? We got you. I mean, and most of these guys, we have 4, 5, 6 different games, some even up to double digits. I think Travion Henderson, we have like 13 games. We have all the tape you could possibly want. And there, it's a 15% discount. 15%. So please take advantage of that. Take advantage of that. Randall, perfect timing. I really like this draft class, and there are a ton of players I like way into the back of the second round. You know how you know that? You know that for sure once you start watching the tape. Elliot, I'm rebuilding, and I have 101 and 106. Should I be looking to trade 106? Yes. So we've talked about it a little bit before. Those mid firsts. What I'm wanting to do, because the hit rate is not any better late first versus mid first. They're almost identical hit rates. So what I'm wanting to do is I'm either wanting to turn that into multiple lates. So turn 106 into 110 and 112, or I want to move up inside the top 4. Give myself a better shot to hit, or give myself multiple opportunities to hit. So I think that's your best bet. Randall, are you trying to sell Jonnu Smith, or are you expecting a repeat performance? Right now, I'm actually in on Jonnu. I want to back him up with somebody, but I do think we could see another top 6 performance. This team has seemed to go with more of a West Coast style where, hey, let's get the ball out quick and get it to our playmakers, versus this more vertical passing game that we used to see out of Miami. So because of that, I think Jonnu Smith just fits perfectly into this offense. All right, next one here, country time. What's your take on Amari Cooper? His value is so low that I feel like the best route is just to hold and hope he finds a good role somewhere. I'm a contender. What say you? Country time. You are absolutely right. Best bet is just to hold him right now. You're not going to trade him for anything of value. It's better to just kind of hold on, wait and see how things go, especially if you're a contender. So no problem, just kind of holding on to him right there. Connor, predictions for this weekend. Who are we seeing in the Super Bowl? I think it finally happens. I think Josh Allen finally beats Patrick Mahomes, which makes this rivalry a little bit more fun, because the Manning Brady stuff got real fun once Manning beat Brady and went to the Super Bowl. Like, that's when that got real fun. And I'm intentionally putting Allen as the Manning and Mahomes as the Brady, because I think Mahomes is going to have more long-term success. But that being said, I think this year it gets really fun. Bills do beat the Chiefs. So I think we've got a Bills. And then, unfortunately, it'd be more fun to see Jaden Daniels. I do think the Eagles win this one. So I think we have an Eagles-Bills Super Bowl. Which, if any of the Washington receivers other than McLaurin are worth investing in? Honestly, I would invest in any. I would not invest in any. I think that they build up this wide receiver core this offseason, and I think they're going to draft somebody and or dig deep into free agency and see what they can get there. Like, T. Higgins would be amazing in this offense. Also, wouldn't be surprised if they draft like an Emeka Buka or somebody like that. So I would say they are going to be adding pieces in that receiving game. Ideal landing spots for Wilson if the Jets trade him. Can he jump into the top tier of wide receivers in the right place? He absolutely can. We saw when Rodgers was playing well, Garrett Wilson was, he had a 5-week stretch where he was the wide receiver 1. So could he be that guy? I think so. I don't see why not. The problem is just like the thing I'm trying to think through is, where does he go? That's another one that I guess could be a good one for Washington. If he goes to Washington and you add him to Terry McLaurin, like, that's a pretty freaking good spot. I don't see the Bills going that route. Although it worked out pretty well when they traded their pick to get Stephon Diggs. Obviously, Justin Jefferson ended up being the better long-term answer, but for a short period of time, Diggs was putting up very, very similar numbers, and that's what they needed in that time. So it's possible, but I think those would be the 2 spots where you're like, oh, yeah, that's it. All right. Yes, we did ask Daniels for Knicks and Neighbors earlier. That was the question, Brizzleton. All right. We got country time again. Superflex 10x12 Pickens, my 27 first and 26 second for G. Will. I'm assuming that's Garrett Wilson. I'm a perennial. Oh, my bad. I'm a perennial contender and also already own a bottom feeders 27 first. Yeah, I have a first and 27 and a second and 26. I think that's fantastic value for Garrett Wilson. So totally, yeah, love that. There it is. Tape season 15% off. Boom. And drop the mic knows the tape room is amazing. Get in the film room. All right. Raul. If I had Chase, JJ, CD, Saquon, Kyron, but very little depth, should I be shipping the running backs for a younger running back and a pick to get deeper? Yeah, probably. It depends on like where the rest of your team's at too. How are you at quarterback? How are you at tight end? But to assume nobody's going to get hurt is probably a tough call. Now, that being said, if you have picks that you can use to do that instead of having to ship off your starting level talent, then I have no problem with it. DK or Jalen McMillan, still going with DK there. I think it's just selling a little bit too low. I love hearing this. I'm a super team. Heck yeah, you are. I'm a super team hunting for stars. Would you do AJ Brown 103 and 2 seconds for Chase? Man, I wouldn't blame you for doing that. I don't know that I would make the move because most years, now obviously it wasn't this year, but most years AJ Brown, Jamar Chase are pretty close, but you do get an extra 2 to 3 years there with Jamar Chase. So I wouldn't blame you. The 103 is still a very valuable piece. So I could see it. I just don't know that I would make that move. Tristan, big trade question. Coming off a championship, but want to get younger. Would you trade CD and JT and a late first for Neighbors and Gibbs? Yup. I would take Neighbors and CD very close. I would take Gibbs above JT. And that late first, it's very hit and miss. Very, very hit and miss. So I would do that. I would make that move. All right, a couple more questions we'll get to, and then I got to bounce and get out of here. Crunchy fries, Contender, Superflex, 1.5 tight end premium, McBride or Hawkinson and Jacobs in a mid-second. Go ahead and give me Hawk, Jacobs in the mid-second. McBride's been really good, and there's definitely a chance that he could improve with him having basically no receiving touchdowns last year. He could definitely improve, but Hawkinson could also improve. We've seen him be at a very similar tier as McBride in the past, and you get Jacobs and a mid-second on top. So I'll take that group. Yo, Garrett, based on your teapot, there we go, on your tape review and understanding of this year's not as strong as last year's, which youth should we be targeting with which picks would we be using? Pick 7 and back to target. I don't know that I would say it's not as strong as last year's class. It just depends on the position. Like it's not as strong at receiver and quarterback. That's 100% for sure. But it's just as strong at tight end, if not stronger, and definitely stronger at running back. So depends on what you're looking for. So which use should we be targeting? I think Rome Odunze's one that we've talked about a little bit. I think he's one of those guys. Garrett Wilson is a guy that I think is down a little bit right now. Jalen Waddle is very, very cheap, especially if something does happen to Tyreek. Like I think all of those guys are good targets to go after and get. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I had a great time hanging out with you guys, chopping it up. Reminder, tape season. You want 15% off? Tape season, SZN. Get you 15% off today, and it might be shut off after today. So I would definitely get on it so you can watch that all 22 tape. Appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your day.